Today we're going to talk about chord tone soloing, and chord tone soloing is a way to make your solos sound more relevant to the harmony that's being played in any situation. It's a way to outline the harmony with an improvisation, with a solo, to where someone could pick out the harmony of the song even if all they heard was your solo. And this sits in contrast with what I would call more of a scalar approach to soloing. And a scalar approach would be a typical approach that you'd take when you're learning how to solo. You would take a scale. Let's say you're playing a song that has a progression of B minor to E minor, and it goes something like this. A typical scalar approach would be, let's say, using a pentatonic scale, a B minor pentatonic scale to play over this, which works fine. So that's the scalar approach. If I take the same progression and I take more of a chord tone soloing approach, I could do something like this. I don't know if you caught the difference there. I'm accenting on that E minor chord the notes that are in the E minor arpeggio, and I'm not only playing those notes, but I am accenting those, and so that even without hearing the rhythm guitar or the rhythm, another harmony underneath what I'm playing, you're going to be able to hear the harmony of what I'm playing over. So what I want to show you today is some different approaches over different types of chord progressions to help you get into the world of chord tone soloing and to help you understand this concept better so that you could kind of take your solos from the scalar place to incorporate this idea, this chord tone soloing idea that can provide a really nice balance to your scalar playing, because I think scalar playing is very useful and can sound great. You can do all sorts of cool things with that, but I think that this is a complementary approach that can really make your solos sound a lot more interesting. And also, this is extremely important when you get into playing non-diatonic chord progressions that I'll get into one at the end of this video, where you have something like, let's take a B major chord to an F major 7. That's called a non-diatonic chord progression because these two chords are not in the same key. And so if I were to play B major over the B major, that sounds fine. But then I hit that F major 7 and I keep playing B major. That just doesn't work. I have to change what I'm playing in order to be relevant to the new chord. Then when I go back to B major, F major, so there's with especially non-diatonic chord progressions, you really need to understand how to anchor your soloing notes to the chords you're playing. So anyway, it's kind of a long introduction, but we're just going to start with a basic 1, 4, 5 progression, and then we're going to move through 4 different progressions that can show you different aspects of this concept. So let's jump in. Okay, so the first progression we're going to look at is just a basic major progression. We're going to take the key of A. We're going to go from A to D to A to E. This is just a 1, 4, 1, 5. That's very typical for a lot of different kinds of music. You'll hear all sorts of progressions that follow this pattern. So if I was going to take a scalar approach, I could play A major pentatonic, and I could sound great, take a whole solo just playing that, or the A major 7-note scale instead of the penta 5-note scale. So pentatonic would sound like this. 7-note. those are some of the lines that I could play and might play if I was playing a solo over something like this. So now I'm going to change up what I'm doing to cover more of the chord tones. So chord tones being the notes in the arpeggio of the chord I'm playing: A major, A, C sharp, E, D major, D, F sharp, A, E major, E, G sharp, B. And when you're doing chord tone soloing, it's not, let me show you what you don't want to do, is just only play those notes. You can do that if you like how it sounds. I don't particularly like how that sounds. Sounds a little square to me, but that could be a good way for you to start understanding how to do this. But what I do is I just think about accentuating the notes that are in the arpeggio. So when the chord changes, I want to play something that's relevant to the chord that I'm changing to, because it sounds like I'm fitting in with the harmony much better. So if I start here, it changes to the 4 chord. I might do something like this. I just did a little slide half step and then move up that D arpeggio. Then to go back to the A. And then when we hit the E, I might do something like this. So things like that. I am playing like the arpeggio of E, but I'm also adding some chromatics. I'm going from the B, the 5th of E, and going up an arpeggio. And I could do a lot of different ideas out of that. There's another one, adding the flat 7 of E. But I think that focusing on these chord tones, to my ears, it just sounds like you're really locked in with the harmony, and you're not just meandering about playing kind of blues lines over chord progression, which is great. I'm not talking down to that, actually. I really don't think that that's bad. I think it's great to do both of these, and so I'm trying to show a companionship between these two approaches. And like I said in the introduction, when you get into non-diatonic progressions, this is crucial, because you're going to play lots of bad, wrong-sounding notes if you don't know how to do this. So a couple more ideas just on this basic 1-4-1-5 progression. So if I'm here, anywhere I'm at on the neck, I know where my triads are. On a progression like this, let's say I want to start here on A on the 2nd string. I've got my A triad here, my D triad here, A triad again, E triad. And knowing these triad patterns creates great shell outlines for chord tone soloing. So I'll take that same progression, and I'm just going to solo up here using these patterns. So without even hearing the rhythm underneath it or the harmony underneath it, you can hopefully hear the harmony, because I'm outlining it on all these different chord changes. And of course, I didn't just stick with these 3-string shapes. I was using the full range of that position. And The reason that I know where all these notes can be played in each of the chords is because of the what I call the big three triad shapes, which is something that I've talked about before in videos and I will talk about again. But essentially, these are just big triad shapes that cross all 6 strings. And there's 3 of them, so they make a great roadmap for understanding where you are at any point on the neck. So that is a basic progression, just a 1-4-1-5 progression, and we're going to move on from that now to a blues type of pattern. And blues patterns are interesting for a few reasons. One is that they use a lot of dominant chords. They tend to, not always. There's of course minor blues and all sorts of different kinds of blues patterns, but a lot of time you get kind of a that's just a little shuffly blues using A7, D7, and E7. So you can, of course, with the blues, just play pentatonic scales. But again, that's that scalar approach where you're not hearing in the soloist by itself the chord changes that are happening underneath. So what I want to show you is how I approach some of these blues types patterns with dominant chords, some of the changes I think are really helpful to outline the chords, and then show you just kind of a basic idea of how you can use this to have another way to approach blues patterns. So when I'm thinking like an A7 kind of blues thing, a lot of times I'm putting a lot of emphasis on the blue third, the minor third going into the major third as a way to really define that chord. So if I started a solo here, 3, whoops, 3, so I'm using an A7 kind of pattern. I'm thinking of the A7 arpeggio. I'm thinking of the minor third into the major third. That gives me a really good bluesy sound. I'm using this note, the 6 or the 13, because this is a sound that works very well with this type of a dominant chord, an A13 chord. And there, I just went into kind of a D7 up to the 4 chord. Back to the 1. A little more scalar there on the 5 chord, and I'm not doing the exact blues progression that I played before. But what I want to show you is some of these shifting harmonies. So when we go to the 4 chord, one of the interesting things about playing like a A7 to a D7 is that when we hit the D7, the 7th of that chord is a C, which is the minor third of A7. of A7. So I hear guys do this, unfortunately, more often, pretty often. And what I mean is I hear people playing a blues, and if they're trying to play a major kind of sounding, when it goes to the 4 chord, they'll keep playing this note. That's bad. You don't want to do that. You want to be relevant to the chord that's being played by adjusting the notes that you're playing. So I'll do a little piece of just the 1 to 4 of a 12-bar blues, the first 4 bars of a 12-bar. Here we go. So when I went to that 4 chord in the second bar, I'm accentuating that note, which is this flat 7 of the 4 chord. Here's my arpeggio. I can do any number of, arpeggios, mixing in scalar lines with that. And then resolving back to that 1 chord. So, you notice I use a lot of chromatics, connecting chord tones. Here's another good idea for you if you are on, say, the A7 chord, and you have these 2 chord tones. I could use chromatics to connect those 2. I did it up here too, going from the 5 up to the 7. There's just some interesting ways to fill rhythm and to create some interesting sounding lines, chromatics, connecting chord tones. And then when we go to the 4 chord, back to the 1. Now let's hit the 5 chord. Whoops. Hit the 5 chord. Again, sorry. 4. So what I'm doing, I'm just outlining these chords. So no matter where I end up, let's say I'm here, A. It's just an A7 arpeggio. If I want to go to the 4 chord, D. I've got that one right there. And when I hit the 5 chord, I've got E7 right there. So I could play a whole blues just using those positions, and this is available. These are all over the neck. There's a bunch of them. If you know your arpeggios well, which is tied into how well you know your chords, because obviously chords and arpeggios are based on the same patterns. If you know your chords really well and your arpeggios really well, you can find these patterns anywhere on the neck. So I'm going to take one time around a 12-bar blues just in this position here, and hopefully it'll be a good demonstration of what I'm talking about. On each of these chords, one thing to note is that a pattern like that works really well. The minor third into the major third and then going 5, 6 up to the root. It works really well on all the different chords. that a lot in that little run through, that motif that it goes all the way back. I mean, I hear that all the time in old school jazz, like Charlie Christian did that all the time. Wes Montgomery, all the old jazz guys, you hear it in blues all the time, and it's just a great sounding little run. So, the difference should be hopefully fairly obvious between just like a pentatonic blues approach where I'm just playing, just kind of riffing out on. That versus like a really chord tone focused approach. So the chord tone focused approach is going to make a much more, well, it's just a difference. Just like I've been saying this whole time. It's just something that can complement your scalar ideas and give a little more relevance to, or a little more tie in your soloing more with the chords that are happening. I'm going to tune up here real quick, and then we'll talk about a typical minor chord progression. We're going to take a minor chord progression that uses all diatonic chords except one, which is typical in a minor key. So a minor key is just kind of a flip of the major. You've got the sixth chord of a major key is its relative minor. You probably know this, but you take a minor key like we've been playing around in A the whole time, so I'm just going to keep it there for now, and we'll take F sharp minor. And so we're going to do a typical minor progression, and what we're going to do here, this is going to tie us into the non-diatonic progression that we're going to do next, because in a minor key you often get a 5 chord, the 5 of the 6th chord, that is a non-diatonic chord as it relates to the major key. So in the key of A major, we have the chords A major, B minor, C sharp minor, D major, E major, F sharp minor, then G sharp, diminished, or half diminished if you're doing a 7th. Go back to A. When you take that relative minor of F sharp minor, it's the 6th chord. Well, the 5 of that 6th chord would typically be the C sharp minor. But typical in a minor key is that the 5 chord is a dominant or a major chord. And what that does a lot of time, what it sounds like is it just increases kind of the gravity that pulls you back towards your home base, this minor. And so that's a good kind of shoe-in example of how to approach a non-diatonic chord when you're soloing, because you have to change the note that you're playing in order to be relevant to the chord that's happening. So if I take a progression, F sharp minor, B minor, D, I'm playing a D major 7, to a C sharp 7 sharp 9, or C sharp 7. So I could again get away with just playing pentatonics the whole time. And that would be fine. What I'm going to do is show you how I would approach soloing over this. And I would do that same way I've been doing the other ones. I would make sure that I'm outlining notes that are in each of these chords and emphasizing them, not only playing them, but clearly emphasizing those chord tones each time it changes, so that what I'm playing has a great relevance and sounds very like it fits in really nicely with the chords. So I'm going to take that same progression. I'm just going to take one time through soloing on it to show you what I mean. So 3, 4. B minor, D major 7, C sharp 7, back to B, F sharp minor, B minor. Sometimes it's hard to say things out loud while I'm trying to play through something, but so I don't know if I said all the chords correctly there, but let me show you the basic patterns I'm following here. F sharp minor 7, I'm just following these basic F sharp minor 7 kind of patterns. When I go to the B minor 7 or the B minor, I've got this bar chord here that can be a guide. And B minor is very similar to D major 7. If I just kind of, oftentimes what I'll do is just replace the B with the major 7 of D, which is C sharp. And there I have a D major 7 arpeggio. And then on the C sharp 7, I can use my C sharp 7 arpeggios. This is also, I was playing a sharp 9, so a 7 sharp 9 has both the major third and the sharp 9, which is basically the minor third an octave up. So this is an interesting chord. Whereas the F sharp minor, the B minor, and the D major all share the same scale. If you, it's like an A major parent scale. C sharp 7, sharp 9 does not. So, if you wanted to, you could use just the arpeggio to outline that. But if you wanted to play something very relevant and very kind of hip sounding, you would probably want to use an altered scale. And if you're not familiar with the altered scale, I'm not going to go over it in great detail here, but I'm just going to show you some patterns that that are helpful for the altered scale. So if I take my C sharp here on the 9th fret of the 1st string, go down kind of like a flat 3 in relation to the C sharp, flat 3, flat 2, 1, flat 7, flat 6, flat 5, flat 4, flat 3, flat 2, flat 1. That's one basic one octave of an altered scale. It's a very unstable sounding scale, but it's really cool when you use it as a way to bring you back to like a minor 1. So if I did kind of a altered lick, resolving to an F sharp minor. So that so in this case, there's a couple things you can do. Like I said, you've got your C sharp 7 arpeggios. Back to your F sharp minor, or you've got your C sharp altered lick. Things like that. So one more time around this progression, I'm just going to be using F sharp minor, B minor, D major, and then C sharp altered. I'll try it in a different position just to kind of show you a different way that I might approach it. So 3, 4. So I know that maybe this is I hope that this is clear, like kind of what I'm getting at here. You may not have all these patterns under your fingers, and that's totally okay, but I hope that if you're watching this, if you're still with me here, that you're understanding the importance of just being able to get inside the chord changes. This is what I'm really trying to get at here, is just like wrap your brain around the notes that are changing in the chords. Get inside of the changes. Don't just play scalarly, because what happens if you just do that and you don't know how to get inside the changes, if you hit a chord that doesn't fit, you're going to be playing notes that sound bad. I mean, that's the simplest way I can put it. You're going to be playing irrelevant notes. You're going to be hammering a major third when you should be playing a minor third, and it just sounds very amateur. So the final progression I want to leave you with today is just a progression that uses kind of shifts. It's not a non-diatonic progression that'll kind of shift between multiple keys, and this is pretty typical in R&B music. You'll see a lot of this in jazz, not exactly this way, but in jazz you see a lot of modulations where you have 2 5s moving to random keys. And so you have to be able to trace those modulations with your chords, with your solos. You have to be able to shift with that, and that's one of the things that makes jazz challenging. Well, R&B music has a lot of this stuff too, so we're going to focus on more of an R&B pattern. I think that for getting used to like non-diatonic chord patterns, R&B is a little easier point of entry for that than some of the jazz stuff, but at any rate, they're very interrelated. So we're just going to do a simple kind of R&B pattern chord progression here. It starts on E major 7, goes down to a C major 7, then goes down to an A major 7, to an F major 7. And that's it. And on that F, I added a little sharp 11 there. Open second string. So this is a type of progression that's kind of, it's going from E major to a C major 7, which is kind of like borrowing from the E minor key, because in E minor, C major 7 is a diatonic chord. So we're kind of got this major minor interplay going on. C major, and then we're going back to a chord that presents itself in the key of E major. It's a 4 chord A major 7. So we're kind of back to an E major type of tonality, and then we're going to an F major 7, which is acting as a kind of a passing chord, get us back to E major 7. So the way that I would approach soloing over a progression like this would be very heavily using chord tones like we've been talking about. There is a way to approach it in a more scalar way, which I'll go over in just a second. But using arpeggios like that with connective notes through the scales would be one way to do it. So on an E major, I might start with something like this. And then right when it changes to that C major, I would want to play a note that's really relevant to that. I like the sound of that. That's the D, which would be the ninth or the second of the C major chord. If I did a little falling riff from there, I could start with a chromatic and then move down my arpeggio, finish it off with a little scalar line. One nice thing about this particular change from E major to C major is that the scale I would use on E major would be E major scale, although I would probably omit the 4th, or I would make it a sharp 11, because that would sound... The natural 4 would sound weird to me on this type of a progression. But then when I go to the C major, then I could just... The scale that would fit would just be an E minor scale, which would give me the same thing as a C Lydian. So sometimes when I play these types of progressions, this is getting into the scalar piece, but I think it's relevant. Over the E, I could play that E Lydian, and then I could go to an E minor scale as a way to outline that C major. Let's go back to the chord tone approach, though. So if I have this arpeggio here, adding that 9 on top there, and then those connective scale notes through the C Lydian scale, I can make this relevant chord change here. So then when I land on this A, here we're back at it. Something that is in the key of E major, a chord that's in the key of E major, so I can use my chord tones, my A major arpeggios. And again, Lydian, A Lydian is the same as well, Lydian sounds right here again. Oftentimes when you have these kind of just moving major 7 chords, each one individually, Lydian is the one, like the mode that sounds the most fitting for each of them. C Lydian, A Lydian, and then F Lydian. So, but when I get to this A, I can kind of think about it from the A major 7 perspective, but also it's like I'm switching back to where I started in the E, the key of E major. So I've got all these options of, and then I'm going down to the F major 7. And then when I reach the E major again, I can hit a chord tone like the major 7. C major 7. A major 7. F major 7. E major. I went off the rails at the end of that, but I'm just kind of trying to demonstrate this idea in a way that hopefully you can kind of hear how I'm doing it, even if it's not something that you're capable of doing yet. I think that if you spend some time with this progression in particular, that's going to help you better understand the non-diatonic chords, how these shift through. Spend a little time just kind of on each of these chords. Kind of explore the arpeggios for each. Find the connecting scale notes that sound good. And then try to put it together in a rhythmic way and practice through it so that you can kind of hold yourself to the rhythm that you're playing, or to the rhythm of an actual song, something that has kind of a musical cadence. But spend some time just kind of exploring the different harmonies and the different scales that go along with them before you really try to solo over this in a strict rhythm pattern. Okay, so that's everything for this video. This may be a bit of an advanced concept, but I think it's extremely helpful, and I think that if you work on mastering this with basic chord patterns, you will be able to make your soloing sound a lot more relevant and interesting to the chords that are being played. So that's why I wanted to present this, and if you have any questions, please let me know. And until next time, practice hard and enjoy the journey.